Final Fantasy was created by Hironobu Sakaguchi, who had intended to make a role-playing game for a long time, but his employer, Square, now Square Enix, refused to give him permission as it expected low sales of such product. However, when the RPG Dragon Quest was released and provided to be a hit in Japan, the company reconsidered its stance on the genre and approved Sakaguchi's vision of fighting fantasy, an RPG inspired by Ultima and wizardry. According to the game's composer, Nobuo Uematsu, the title was later changed to Final Fantasy as the game was thought to be the company's final project under the threat of bankruptcy. Sakaguchi also explained that the new title stemmed from his personal situation. Had the game not sold well, he would have quit the games industry and gone back to the university. In 2015, Sakaguchi revealed the name's real origin. The team wanted a title that would be abbreviated to FF, which would sound good in Japanese. The name was originally going to be Fighting Fantasy, again, but due to concerns over the trademark conflicts with the role-playing game book series of the same name, they needed to settle for something else. They eventually chose Final Fantasy. According to Sakaguchi, any title that created the FF abbreviation, or FU in Japan, would have done the same. Commenting on the original story, Sakaguchi said that those days definitely seemed like end times, but honestly, any word that started with F would have been fine. The story follows 4 youths called the Light Warriors who each carry one of the world's 4 elemental orbs, later turned to crystals in revamped versions of the game, which have been darkened by the 4 elemental fiends. Together they quest to defeat these evil forces, restore light to the orbs, and save the world. Players can name their characters and choose one of 6 classes for each, including Warrior, Monk, Thief, Red Mage, Black Mage, and White Mage. Now to backtrack a little bit, Final Fantasy was originally released in Japan in 1987 for the Famicom. It was later ported to America in 1990 for the NES on July 12th. Now this is exactly why we're celebrating today. Instead of going to a Western retrospective, I thought it'd be cool to just focus on the first game. But first, as I teased earlier, this game has been ported and revamped for so many consoles. So I'm just going to go through every single one and give you all the details. First of all, we got the NES one, again, 1987 Japan, 1990 US. The rest, I'll just go through Japan just to make it quick and easy. 1989 for the MSX2, 1994 for the Family Computer, 2000 for the WonderSwan Color, 2002 for the PlayStation, 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, 2004 for the mobile phones, 2007 for the PSP, 2009 for the Wii Virtual Console, 2009 for the PlayStation Store, 2010 for the iOS, 2011 for the downloadable PSP game, 2012 for Windows phones, 2012 also for Android phones, 2013 for the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console, 2013 for the Wii U Virtual Console, 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console again, and 2015 for the Nintendo eShop. That is a lot of versions, so it goes without saying that this game can be easily found on a number of systems, and pretty cheap too, and I definitely recommend that you go back and play it. To those that have maybe experienced Final Fantasy in just the newer light, go back, revisit the classics, and this one still holds up. Now, as you're watching here, you will see the NES, the Game Boy Advance version, the PS1, and the PSP, just to understand how each version kind of looks. Since 2000, most versions pretty much look the same from the WonderSwan Color port of the game, which was a 16-bit remake from the NES version. They've all had tweaks to the story, to the gameplay, and all that nonsense. And my friend Shay and I will be talking about this. This original clip was from the most recent episode of EGP, episode 12, where we talked about that in Dragon Quest IX. But because the conversation was so good, I decided to port this into my retrospective video here. So, without further ado, let's join in on the conversation and how me and Shay look back on the series. So Final Fantasy 1, I played this, of course, not when it came out for the Nintendo. I played it for the PS1 port that we got. That collection, Final Fantasy Origins, which was 1 and 2, that collection came out in America in 2003 for the PlayStation 1. And that was kind of like, because post Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and 9, you know, they're catching us like, okay, let's release these old ones now. We never got 2 over here. 2 was 4, 3 was 6, and then after 3, we got 7. It's like, people were like, what? Yeah, so that was the first time I played the game, and it still held up pretty good. It was, you know, it's just a very classic RPG. And I think my favorite version of the game is the Game Boy Advance version. Just because it's like one cartridge, there's no freaking load time. But yeah, Origins was a pretty decent port. They crisped up the graphics. It was a port of the, that version is based off the WonderSwan version, which was a Bandai portable thing that they had in Japan. That basically, Gunpei Yokoi, the father of the gameplay, he left because they fired him basically after the Virtual Boy. He partnered up with Bandai to make this WonderSwan. And, you know, there's not a lot of great games for it, but there is some, like, classic things which we can thank the WonderSwan to, like, make the WonderSwan version of Final Fantasy, which was, like, a 16-bit remake of the first Final Fantasy, and, you know, to add some stuff. So I think if you go back today, kids, I think the Game Boy Advance version is, like, the game to get. Even though probably the easier version would be to get the PSP version, which is also pretty good. It's hard to describe. It almost looks like a Flash version of the game. It's very, very weird. Not to say that it looks bad, but I like the pixelated version of the Game Boy Advance. Just like, aesthetically, that's why it's my favorite. But I actually played for about like 15 hours. I played the first Final Fantasy on that Game Boy Advance version. From the very start, I made a warrior, a thief, you know, the classic build, which is warrior, thief, black mage, black mage. Yeah. That is basically the classic formula. And, you know, I made it all the way up into about getting the Earth Crystal, and I was like, man, it takes a long, long time in order to get the one crystal. There's so many random battles. There is no way to, like, exit a dungeon besides teleport. But in order to use teleport, you have to unlock the Black Mage upgrade. And you don't get that for a long time in the game. So it still holds up, and then it's like a good classic turn-based RPG, but it's also very archaic in like terms that we like know nowadays for, you know, we have it very easy nowadays for like RPGs, but like it's not bad. It's just, you know, hard to go back to, but I have been enjoying playing it. I'm blabbing like a schoolgirl here. What about you? What about you?
Yeah, I played it on the PS1. I really liked it. Like, this was about the time I started playing D&D for the first time.
It's very D&D for sure. Yeah.
Like, I really loved the original Final Fantasy. Like, actually, my build was warrior, red mage, black mage, white mage. I didn't use thief formula.
You know what?
Even though
there's only one reason why you want the thief, in that you get the ninja later on, and the ninja's an amazing class. Otherwise, the thief is just like a gimped class that it can't steal. They didn't have that function for the original, so there's no reason why he's a thief. Like, he has no special powers. Although the warrior doesn't
only use light armor.
Yeah.
He can only use, like, shitty weapons.
He's a waste of space. Like, yeah, like, the red mage is, like, awesome. It's, like, the jack of all trades, and, like, it sucks that you can't do, like, that many spells. Like, the whole spell slot thing, that's definitely D&D, where you can't have all the spells. And you have to buy the spells.
How many spells you can use per day, too? Or how many spells you can use per, like, whatever?
So,
before you go to
So this is us talking about, obviously, the PS1 and, like, Game Boy Advance versions, because I assume you played that, the Dawn of Souls as well.
Yep.
So this is us talking about that. Now, have you gone back and played the NES version?
No.
I have.
What treat is that?
That, if people go back and play the original Final Fantasy, I think they would not be looking back at it as nostalgic as we are now. Of course,
it's harder,
if
right?
you played... Kudos to those who had actually played the NES version, because that is a hard game to beat.
It's a hard game in the remakes to do.
Yeah, they fixed a lot of stuff for those remakes. Just the whole spell thing. Like, with the original, you could only use your spells in the slots just for a certain amount of times. And, you know, this is the reason why people hold Final Fantasy in such high regards. Until very recently. But, you know, until 13 came out, Final Fantasy was like a huge deal, and now it keeps on getting like dragged through the mud. And like, I still think there's hope left in Final Fantasy. It's just, I just don't know what, you know, Square Enix is doing with like all these spin-offs and stuff. And
I don't know if they know what they're doing.
I think they're getting back on track. It's just that we've been waiting so long for like a track correction that now that they finally kind of got in this track correction. But yeah, Final Fantasy. Go play that one if you haven't, kids.
Boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, subscribe, boom, jack, boom, boom, jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, jack, boom, jack, boom, boom, subscribe.